I have no idea what I'm doing behind a microphone, but let's make some cool drum beats. So I started playing today and I was thinking about what kind of vibe we should go for, and I think the best way to kick it off is definitely, it's got to be a D'Angelo groove, hasn't it? So let's have a look at how we make a D'Angelo style recording and production and anything else to do with D'Angelo drums. Big love to Questlove. So in spirit of D'Angelo, we are going for the Ludwig Questlove breakbeat snare, really cheap snare, 14 by 5.5. On the kick, we're using a Dixon Little Rumor Select 20 by 12. Cymbals, we're not really using any of the other ones, we're just sort of using the hi-hat at the moment. This is an Ephesus prototype which they made for me. Shout out to Ephesus, big fan of them. But it's just a 14, nice and bright, with some tape on the top to try and sort of dampen out those like harsh overtones. And then we've got just a microfiber cloth, again just doing the same thing. We've got standard drummer's wallet filled with nothing because no one pays us anything. So I went for a 14 by 5 wooden snare. The reason why I went for a 14 by 5.5 is because it's used a lot in the sort of hip hop side. It gets a very warm tone instead of like a brass or an aluminium or a steel snare. You want that almost like papery sound to the shell as well as the snares themselves. On top of this as well, I also found that using two different styles of sticks helped as well. I was messing around a lot with the rim click tone, and I found that for the rim click you do want quite a beefy, dense stick. So I've gone with a Veta Power 5A in the left hand, and then for the hi-hat, a Meinl Nano Stick, basically a glorified chopstick. It's massive, really light, and it's quite a just a nice little tap sound instead of a proper deep hit on the hi-hat. The main reason being is because for records like Voodoo, the hi-hat was actually recorded with a pencil. It's really light. I thought instead of using a pencil, I felt a bit more comfortable using this. It does the same thing, but now we've got quite a nice light hi-hat with the right hand and quite a beefy rim click with the left hand. And in the kick has a bit more going on. I've been playing around with a couple different things with the kick. I've lined the bottom with a bit of foam. On top of that, we've got 2 bricks. Adding bricks to a kick is always a good idea, or sandbags. Just creates a better thud, a more dense kick. On top of that, we've then just got a big pillow, and that just sort of slightly muffles the batter head. I have removed the reso head as well, as I felt I just didn't need it. With the kick as well, after taking the batter head off, I had to play around with some beaters as well. I chose just a big fluff ball, literally just like a giant marshmallow, but I found it gave it quite a warm, dark sound instead of a punch or a click. We're not really after a punch in this sort of thing, we're more after a thud, which I feel like the fluff ball does quite well. And on the kick, mic-wise, we just have a really cheap Shure like drum microphone pack kick mic. Nothing special, just does the job. On the snare, we've got an SM7B on the top with the pop filter taken off, and on the bottom we have an Octava Mark 012. It's a nice small diaphragm condenser, a little Russian mic. It's great for snare bottoms, overheads, anything a pencil's good for. And then for our overhead, we are using just an Aston Spirit with a bit of a low pass on it. So we do have other mics set up, but I'm not actually using them. I'm just recording the overhead, the snare top, snare bottom, and kick mic. Because realistically, that's all you really need. Anything more than that, and it's just getting a bit pretentious, but it's fun. So it's a more stripped back style of recording. 4 mics, you'd use it in a standard 4-track recorder. Kick, snare top, snare bottom, overhead. Does everything you need it to do. We were looking for quite a dry sound as well, so this kind of small room with the low cloud is quite ideal. So without further ado, let's break down. I have no idea what I'm doing. Without further ado, let's dive into the processing side of the sound you heard at the start. I feel like that'll be a good place to start. Why am I still speaking? What's the hand movement as well? Okay, so we are in the computer now. Let's have a look through each of these individual stems. So we're going to go through stem by stem, and then we're going to look at each individual plugin, and then we're going to slowly add a plugin until we get to the final mix. So to start off with, here is the kick unmixed. So you notice it's quite papery sounding. You can hear a lot of the snare bleed. In this style of mix, I want to try and make it sound a bit more like a drum machine, so a bit more disconnected between the two. So to do that, we've got a gate, which is just clearing up most of the bleed from the snare into the kick mic, so you can hear that here. So after that, we have an EQ. There's a bit of a weird resonance in the kick that I just wanted to get rid of around this area, and then doing this made it sound quite a bit punchier as well. Following on from the EQ, we have a multi-band expander. All this is doing is basically giving a bit more punch and a bit more almost click without actually raising the level of the high end any more than we need to. So as you can see here, I've sort of brought back the low end a little bit, and then every time the kick is hit, it then jumps into the around plus 3 dB range. Alongside that as well, I've also pulled down the high end. This is getting triggered every single time that these get hit as well. So it's not reacting to the high end, it's reacting to the low end and then boosting the high end back up to 0 just to give it a bit more click and then bring it down. But it's not going over 0. That sounds like this. We now just need to bring back a little bit of that low end. There wasn't too much low end in the original Voodoo recordings. However, personal preference wise, I want to just bring back a little bit more of that low end into the kick just to make it a bit more beefy. So to do that, we have this free plugin by Analog Obsession. Shout out to Nathan for recommending me this. All this does is just accentuate the low end of your kick. So all I'm doing is just boosting that up by a few dB, changing the overall output a little bit by 3 dB as well. So this is what that sounds like. So you can hear we get a nice beefy sounding kick. So that is our kick tone. So I'll play it with no plugins on and then we'll A-B it. So moving on from the kick, we have our snare top and our snare bottom. Both of these are going into a snare bus, as you can see here. And we've got a couple of things going on with each of these. The actual tracks themselves don't have too much on them, but then after that, the snare bus is where most of the magic happens in that. So for the snare top, all we're doing is running it through the UAD Neve preamp, and we're just boosting a little bit of the high, the mids, and a little bit of the low. And then we've also got a low end roll off here. After that, we've then got a bit of a surgical EQ, and what that's doing is really cranking the mid. I wouldn't normally mix a snare like this, but for this style, it's really quite beneficial. There's a couple little resonances with the rim clicks that I want to get rid of here as well. A little side note as well, when you're mixing snares, the snare top and bottom, never do a low cut like that. You don't ever really want these, because if you do that you might run into some phasing issues, so it's safer to just low shelf it and then in the bus low cut it. Moving on to the snare bottom, all we've got is a bit of a gate, as just there was quite a lot of kick coming through. So after that we've got really quite a drastic EQ on this one. So although our low end is gated, I wanted to really roll it off as well, just to make sure when it does come through that it doesn't have any of that kick in it. So again, like the snare top and kick, we'll A-B that without any mixing on it, and then we'll go back to full mixing and you can hear the difference there. So on the snare bus group, we have the majority of the tone and overall characteristic of the snare. So to start off with, we've just got another gate, just in case if there was any little bits that weren't being picked up by the gate on the snare bottom. And also we don't have one on the snare top, so I'm just making sure that this one really just sort of cleans up everything. After that, we've then got a bit of a transient shaper. It's mainly clearing up the sustain and sort of removing a bit of that room tone in it, as I wanted to just try and keep it a really snappy, almost sample-like snare. And then rolling off on the Mojo knob is just some of the low mids of the snare as well. So it's really just making it quite a snappy, crunchy sounding snare. After that, we've then just got another EQ doing a similar thing, just really sort of nitpicky reductions going on here. Some in the rim clicks when I wasn't too happy with them. You'll come to realise that some of this is quite unconventional. I normally wouldn't mix certain things like this. If it needs it, then put a million EQs on it for all I care. After that EQ, we've then just got a compressor that's just ever so slightly taming the initial attack of the snare as well, just sort of smoothing it out a little bit. In doing so, it brought out a bit more of the room tone. So after that, just another little sustain killer, and then that is followed by the saturation. So the saturation is the main one. So we'll play this with no plugins on, and then we'll do all of them, and you can hear the difference in it. Moving on to the overhead, we have quite a few little sort of things to repair the room a little bit, as the room can become quite present in certain areas that you don't really want it to be. So, for the first one, we just have a standard low shelf EQ. I know on records like Voodoo, they do keep a lot of the low end in it, but I felt as my room isn't 100% perfect for recording, I wanted to just get rid of it and then have that low end shine through on the individual kick track. Following on from that EQ, we have then just another transient shaper, killing that sustain a little bit more. This is then followed by a compressor that's ever so slightly taming the attack of the transients. So on your overhead, you want to try and keep it as natural as possible, as that mic sort of glues all the other ones together. Without it, it sounds just a bit too disconnected. And especially as we've got no hi-hat mic, we're going to want to try and keep the hi-hat to snare balance in that mic as consistent as possible. Following on from that, we just have another 1073. Again, just doing very minor EQs, nothing too crazy. So after that, we're just bringing down the sustain a little bit more, and then we're increasing that low mid just a little bit more, as I felt that although it's not a dedicated snare mic, had quite a nice pop, so I thought bringing up the low mid in that just a tad would enhance the snare tone. And finally, we just have an EQ that's cutting a bit of the high mid and a very small amount, around 14k. Because we removed a lot of the low end, the hi-hat was getting quite harsh, so just taming those high mids made it balance out just a little bit more. So again, we'll play the overhead on its own. You'll hear a lot of the bass in the overhead. There's also a lot of the room tone as well. And then after that, we'll play the mixed overhead, and you can hear the difference. It's much tinnier, and it's a running theme with a few of these, is that on their own they do sound a bit tinny, they sound a bit interesting. In the full context of a mix, it does sound solid. After the overhead, we have just the overall drum bus, and we also have a room reverb as well. All that this room reverb's doing is just adding quite a dark sort of ambience to the overall drum tone. You can hear it here. So all that we've done to create that is just use Valhalla Room, just a free reverb plugin, really good, followed by the UAD LA2A, set to just parallel compress that reverb a little bit, try and keep that sustain as much as we can. And I found that balancing it to be quite snare and overhead heavy over the kick, just because it's quite a dark reverb. A kick likes to activate it easier than a snare or an overhead does. So that's the room reverb. On the overall drum bus, all that we have is an 1176, just ever so slightly squashing everything, gluing it a bit together. And then we have a limiter, which is really kind of cranking the gain, and that's sort of giving that driven feel that you would get on like an analog desk, just slightly pumping the gains a little bit. So what we're going to do, we're going to listen to the individual stems together with no mixing on it, and then we'll cut to the fully mixed take after that. Okay, so we've got a decent drum tone. Let's now add that back to the bass, and let's also add some keys on there and just hear it in the context of a full song. So that's what this sounds like.